new laws will hit the books starting in 2018, including the ability to purchase marijuana for recreational use.
Joining us to talk more about the impact this law will have is attorney Vikas Bajaj.
Good evening.
Nice to see you.
Likewise.
All right, let's talk about these marijuana laws that are going to go into effect the first of the year here in California. You have to be, 21 and older, and anybody can go to a dispensary and get recreational pot.
That's right. You have limitations on quantity. For instance, now the local ordinance will tell us that we can have up to 1 ounce or up to 8 grams of a concentrated cannabis, edibles or tinctures, oils that are used to help a lot of people with some serious physical and mental illnesses and ailments. So there's regulations on quantity regarding the local ordinances, but of course we will see a lot of law enforcement action, I believe, really geared towards delivery services and unlicensed dispensaries that are now going to be officially operating outside of the regulations, essentially the black market.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just because it's legal doesn't mean people can't still get in trouble. In fact, you can't be smoking and driving and stuff like that, right?
That's correct. And as a defense attorney, I've been practicing in that area almost 18 years now, and I'll tell you, when I see certain laws, it's a reaction. You tend to believe, well, it's important to regulate certain things, such as smoking marijuana or vaping marijuana while you're driving. It is no miracle to say, and you don't have to be a rocket scientist to say it impairs a person's ability to think as they normally would and to perhaps react physically as they normally would. And that's the reason why doctors around the nation prescribe it. It eases certain afflictions, anxiety, and things like that. But we also want to be wary of undue law enforcement action. In other words, now, when I'm at a red light, we were talking about this earlier, it's not uncommon to see a window open by a driver and a big plume of smoke coming out. And you got to wonder, well, is that tobacco or is that marijuana? Well, now a law enforcement officer would be well within their right to investigate that question, and that may lead to other criminal actions that can be prosecuted.
So come January 1st, you can not only smoke marijuana in your vehicle if you're the driver, also it affects passengers. They cannot be smoking or high as well. My question is, how are officers going to enforce it? How are they going to know if you're high? If you're drunk, you can have a breathalyzer or a blood test. What are they doing for people they suspect are high behind the wheel?
Excellent question, and that's an extraordinarily powerful rub in the law enforcement side of this new law. You're right. With the DUI, we have a blood alcohol concentration percentage at 0.08% by volume or greater. The state legislature has said, well, if you're at that level, forensically speaking, there's an assumption that you are under the influence of alcohol, therefore you cannot safely operate a vehicle. And that's a rebuttable presumption from a defense point of view. When we talk about marijuana, we have an analogy to the other subsection that you can be prosecuted for in the state of California for driving under the influence of alcohol. And that is regardless of the blood alcohol concentration percentage. But it is based upon a law enforcement officer's ability to objectively, as we say, observe signs of intoxication. Now, it's hard for a lot of us to hold our breath, and we may be biting our tongue here when we say that that can lead down a primrose path to unintended consequences. But it is a very important thing that we're going to keep our eyes on. As a defense attorney, I can tell you it's very important for us to take law enforcement officers to task, and we are big supporters of law enforcement.
Right.
However, if it is all based upon an individual's objective, supposedly objective observations through a subjective person, one has to raise those questions to make sure the laws are really adequately enforced and prosecuted.
Yeah, you mentioned we're like a guinea pig.
Absolutely.
Guinea pig state. We're going to have to see how this goes as we're living it.
And not only on the civil side, but also on the criminal side. We've talked a little bit about criminal enforcement, but on the civil side, we have issues with unlicensed dispensaries, which will now have more and more penalties and more aggressive law enforcement contact and prosecution. It should be noted that there were hundreds of unlicensed dispensaries in the city of San Diego maybe a few years ago, and the city attorney's office had an unofficial hit list of these places and had methodically gone through each one and prosecuted each one and made sure that either criminally prosecutions were there or civilly money was taken away so the enterprise could not offer its services any longer.
Well, it'll be interesting to watch how this goes, and especially some of these court cases that are going to turn up in the new year to see what happens there as well.
Absolutely.
Vikas Bajaj, thank you very much for
My pleasure.
sharing your expertise, and Happy New Year to you.
Same to you, and to San Diego as well. Thank you.
Thank you.